The Toronto Maple Leafs kicked off their preseason campaign with a 4-3 victory over the Ottawa Senators. What stood out to us? We'll discuss it here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your daily things for all things Leafs, hosted by myself, David Morassutti. And joining me today is my friend, Frank Stanisci, sitting in while Mike is in Vancouver. So Frank, first off, thank you and welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm glad you're here. And we finally get some Leafs game action to talk about. Yes, we did talk about the rookie camp, the rookie games earlier this week, but we have preseason hockey, and it was a familiar sight for the Leafs, beating the Ottawa Senators. Never gets old. It never gets old. A 4-3 victory that started with a 3-0 first period lead, and then a little, third period Ottawa really pushed back. I mean, it kind of happens when you're, down in the game. But I thought, considering how different the two lineups were, you had a Leafs lineup that featured quite a few Marlies bound players, maybe a handful of Leafs and potential Leafs hopefuls. Obviously, the notables in this one: Easton Cowan, Calle Jarnkrok, Nick Robertson, Ben Danford got some played in this game too. But I think a lot of people were pretty happy to see that going up against the Senators lineup that features some of their NHL heavyweights, the majority of their NHL core, a pretty decent result.
Yeah, I think the important thing to take away from this game is the score is actually what the Leafs hope happen this year, and that is Ottawa has a slow start. The Leafs have a quick start, get themselves a few points early in the season that give them a cushion to to glide or slide into the playoffs. And what we saw, I think it's fair to say that the DNA question that was asked and answered, I think in this game, what we saw was a very disciplined Leaf team with a bit of bite and not much bark. In other words, it wasn't much yakking. It was when it came time to stand up for your teammates or play the kind of game you want to play. There wasn't a lot of John. It was just okay. It was basically a game where the Leafs got down to business, and their coach, I think, saw the kind of team he's hoping to have from all the guys who are trying to be on the team, and none of them are the guys you mentioned. None of those guys are in the lineup. None of them. They're not in the lineup. They got to work their way in because we've all heard about Jarnkrok, Robertson, Kemp, how they are basically on the outside looking in, much like the players they played with.
Yeah, out of all the players in this lineup, only one player started in the playoffs. Now, technically, Robertson did play in the playoffs. Only one player played the majority of the games in the playoffs, and that was Calle Jarnkrok. So to give you, this was truly the first impression sort of game for a lot of these guys that are on that roster bubble, or even maybe potentially looking for that first call up. But you brought up, I mean, we always say that in the preseason, results aren't always the big thing, right? You look at the individual performances and how things kind of check out. But the victory in a way is a little significant, as you said, because it really does talk about, the Ottawa Senators, because I constantly hear, this is a Senators team the Leafs have to watch out for. I constantly heard, Leafs have to be looking in the rear view at the Ottawa Senators. And I actually wrote, it should be coming out today. I wrote a Senators team preview, and I didn't put this in my preview, but I was listening to a lot of the comments from the Senators this week, and a lot of them not being happy with their start to training camp. And one of those people was Linus Ullmark. He was constantly like, I haven't, not a good first day, not a good start. He'll have 3 goals on 8 shots. One of the goals, I'll give him a little bit of, his defender tried to make the save, for some odd reason instead of let the goalie make the save. But 3 goals that, I'm sorry, did not look like they all did not look like great goals to give up. So if you're the Leafs, you kind of brought back a little of the playoff nightmare for Allmark, which is, showing them early for goals. Because if we remember last year, especially early on in that series, he wasn't very sharp. And so I do think that when you look at how this game played out, that the Leafs definitely can't, there were some areas that need to clean up, but I thought they play with, the physicality was there. They did not back down. Tyler Clevin leveled, I think it was Pizzetta that got hit by Clevin, and then went, and then there was a lot of that chippiness. We saw Rafai go have a fight with Zach McEwen, which, man, that was interesting. I don't know if I'd be challenging him, but I think a little bit of AHL rivalry between the two players there. Yeah, we Ridley Gregg got hit pretty good. And Pizzetta made sure to go after Ridley Gregg too. I think it's interesting that these guys know who's on the ice and who to go after. But I did like that there was a good amount of competitive fire in this game.
Discipline was the key here, where the team, played within itself, and they did a great job of playing against let's face it, a superior team based on NHL experience. So, yeah. And I know you were really impressed with the Leaf goaltender Akhtyamov. Yeah, I was as well.
Yeah, and we'll do some more individual performers in the next block, but yeah, his name will definitely come up in that one. And I think when you're looking at this week specifically, I mean, these are the first games these guys are playing in a long while, so there's going to be a bit of feeling out and seeing what how this goes. I mean, also 3:00 start, everything's so your routine's totally different. But I did really like the Leafs, how they came out. I mean, scoring 50 seconds into the game, although the Senators could have scored 30 seconds into the game. There was I'm sure that coaches were really happy with the way that both teams started, but it was Leafs getting that early push to get up 3-0. And then they made sure that lead was not going to go away. It took a little bit. It was obviously some nervous moments, but again, a pretty solid result for a Marlies team going up, as you said, against a Senators heavy lineup. So who were some of those players that we were impressed with? Well, on the other side, we'll look at 3 locked on performers that we liked from this game, and we'll discuss a few little news and notes from camp, including some potential hopefuls that are trying to make the team and trying to make a good impression. That's coming up next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put up organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. It does all the heavy lifting. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your finances without ever touching a spreadsheet. And that's the big one here. Why make things complicated? Let's Monarch help you get your finances in order and make sure you're maximizing on your investments, increase your saving rates, easily review finances with your partner and or financial advisor, keeping a clear view of your financial health week to week and long term. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKDOWNNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Welcome back to the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti, and joined as usual. Well, not as usual. Well, usually when Mike's away, there's one gentleman I like to call first. That is my good friend, Candid Frank Stanisci. You can go and check out some of his stuff at Candid Frank Live. He covers quite a bit. Leafs, CFL with me, lacrosse. So if you're a big lacrosse fan, Frank has a great show on that. Now, before we get into our three locked on performers of the game, I wanted to remind everybody that we did have a contest for a Trey Yasevich card, the Blue Jays young and up and coming pitcher who might be seeing a little more action, and who might actually see some postseason action as the Blue Jays. Congratulations, have clinched a playoff spot. And if you did not see the tweet from the Leafs, I should have actually pulled that up because I thought this was one of those great tweets that really great really great tweet that pulls on a trend that's happening right now where everybody thinks that Chris Tanev looks like Kevin Gausman. No offense to Chris Tanev, I think Kevin Gausman's teeth look a little more put together, and the hair is not as long. But I think there's a little bit of resemblance if you put the two of them. I've seen the two of them together. But congrats to Kevin Gausman and the Blue Jays on clinching a postseason spot. So it really, for the Locked On Leafs, we hope the Locked On Blue Jays enjoy a nice long postseason run for their show. So that's great. But with that, we did have a contest for a Trey Yasevich card where you had to predict who was going to score first in this game. Now, I know some people are like, well, it's, it could be just some random person, It's very, very true because guess what? Calle Jarnkrok scored and nobody predicted Calle Jarnkrok to score. I'm like, okay. So what are we going to do? Well, there was somebody who did score in the game. The second goal of the game was Nick Robertson. We had a few people put Nick Robertson as the goal scorer. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pick a random comment. I have a little tool that's going to help me pick a random comment of people who commented with Nick Robertson's name. And I'm just going to, let me see. I could probably present my screen so you guys can, with all fairness and honesty, fairness with the matter. Now, this little tool that I've used before will pick a comment, but it will actually have to be a comment of you predicting him to score, but because there were comments about Nick Robertson, which we'll get to in a second here. So let's see if we pick a winner. Unfortunately, this person did not pick Robertson to score, so we're going to have to keep going. There we go. Urban Droid 71. You did predict that Nick Robertson would score in this game, so you are the winner of the Trey Yasevich rookie card. So we will get in touch with you about that and make sure that we get you that card. You're going to think that card might be worth something one day if Trey Yasevich goes on the arc that we know. So Urban Droid 71, you are the victor of that. All right, Frank, back to business. The Leafs 4-3 win. Sometimes it's hard to pick performers in a game. As we do with every Leafs victory, we pick the 3 stars. I wanted to try something a little different. Let's do a locked on performance. Try to keep the locked on brand going here. So I'll let you go first. Who was a locked on performer that you liked to watch in this game?
Well, in fairness to the people watching, I'm going to pick somebody because I know you didn't pick him because I don't want to steal your thunder. So I'm going to go Rafai. Okay,
Marshall Rafai. He did have a fight in this game. A guy who got some NHL experience this year, so we definitely did see. He's a guy that's trying to stay in that picture of, if the other depth guys, the Philip Myers, Henry Third, those kind of tweener depth guys. I mean, look, the Leafs will have the ability to carry a decent roster and bench, so they can have a guy like Rafai sticking around and he'll earn an NHL paycheck versus an AHL paycheck. So yeah, he's somebody who, he definitely did stand out, and we know that he's earned some playtime in the NHL. What did you like specifically from his game, though?
Well, I liked his bite. It's something that the Leafs don't have on their defense. They have toughness. We talked about the Blue Jay lookalike. We know what he's all about, blocking shots and being real dedicated to keeping the other team off the scoreboard. We know as well that the toughness aspect of the game is what the coach wants, and that means on the defense side there's going to have to be a little more bite, and he offered it really well, and that's something that I guess really why I'm impressed with him. It's the defense itself that was out last night. The guys that they had out there are not starters, but they looked like they could go in as a starter. And here's the key: the Leafs are trying to get a top six forward. The better that those defenders play, the more opportunity and desire for the Leafs to take the chance on getting rid of a defenseman out of their depth, whether it's a up and comer or one that's already established. There's an opportunity for a team that might want another defenseman to pick either of those out of either of those groups, and the Leafs can use that as a bargaining chip. And they do need bargaining chips because, David, as we know, over the past few years, draft choices have gone out the door. And they really don't have a lot of draft choices that they can afford to trade away other than at the trade deadline.
Well, that's really it. They can't afford to they need their depth to step up internally because it's gonna be tough for them to find players, especially through trade and stuff. They gotta find ways to get some of that internal improvement. And look, we have to remember that Rafai was one of those undrafted free agents that the Leafs brought in. I believe he came just after playing in the NCAA. He played at Harvard. He's had 3 full seasons at the AHL, right? Again, only 2 games of NHL experience, but he was on a pairing with William Villeneuve. My guess is that would be one of the top. That might end up being the top pairing for the Marlies. If Rafai ends up going down, that could be how that plays out. But yeah, you bring up his size. He's not a hulking defenseman, but he's got some girth to him. And look, like Zach McEwen is a heavyweight. So I definitely, and look, it didn't look good at the start of that fight, but he sure made sure to get his licks in at the end. So you do like that commitment to, going all in on a fight like that. But I also think defensively that's what Craig Berube wants to see. He wants to see that compete. If find a way to just have a presence in the right way. And I mean we remember that he was kind of thrown into the fire with guys. I think he was called up right after the Morgan Riley suspension, and they had a few injuries, so he actually had to play bottom pairing, but he had to come in a situation that maybe was kind of unexpected. But at 27 years old, you want to see him take that next step. So definitely a good start for Marshall Rafai there. I'll go ahead, Frank.
I was just going to say, just wanted to add, in talking to Rafai, and as you talk to him about coming from NCAA, you've got Haynes and Cullen as well. The Leafs need to find players like this that are not on the draft board. They got to find guys that have a lot of talent, that are outside of the regular flow of players. And that's where the Leafs have to do stuff because of their lack of, draft picks. So I just want to slide that in there. And that's why that's why he's important, because he comes from the zone that the Leafs need to foster, that they need to draw players from. And because they have holes and not draft picks, players like Haynes and Quillen will come to Toronto because they feel they have a better opportunity to start.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'll go with my first locked on player of the game, player top performer, and that's the guy who kind of started it all. It was Calle Jarnkrok. I thought, go to the net, good things happen, and I thought there, there was that one power play goal the Sens had where the positioning was a bit off. But he looks like a player that's in a better position, health wise. if he's healthy, if he's got a bit of that scoring desire back, because that was something last year. He just didn't have that scoring touch. He looked like a guy that didn't play, have a training camp and missed a
Yeah,
good
well,
portion of the year. He
that's
looked like a healthier player.
that was his biggest problem, David. He didn't get a good start to the season. Maybe with a good start to the season, he can be the kind of guy that I think the Leafs expect and want him to be.
Yeah, if it's in a depth role as we've come to expect from Calle Jarnkrok, he can provide that depth scoring. If again, just keep your game simple. Don't pass up opportunities, and that's something that I think we saw from him in this game. Obviously, going to the net, get a shot. That kind of I think it threw the whole Senators off to see him make a move like that. I'm hoping that this is going to be a good preseason for Calle Jarnkrok, because again, if you've got your depth guys really stepping up in a big way, that just makes this team a tougher team to play against. This is what it's going to be all about. It's going to be all about the depth of the lineup coming through in these, in games where, other teams are going to try to hone in on the top six, try to make you beat them with your bottom six, and a player like Jarnkrok can help swing that in your favor. So I thought a good start for him, considering everything. Frank, who is another guy that impressed you?
Impressed me, a lot of players, but the player I want to key on is Robertson. He's a guy who had a great training camp last year and scored a lot of goals in the preseason, but somehow just couldn't do it in the regular season. He's the guy that needs to impress me. He needs to impress the coach. He has an opportunity. And what I saw here and why he impresses me, because he's one of the guys that's in that lineup that we saw last night that can score. And they've got a lot of muckers and rakers. They got a lot of guys that can go get the puck. He's a guy who is well suited. He's not like the rest of them. So, he's the guy that impresses me with the need to be the best player he can be based on what his abilities are. And that is putting the puck in the net. And we saw him do it from long distance. And we saw a play that turned into a goal that really, I didn't see it coming. It was a really nice goal that was surprising. And he's got to do that more often. He's got to be a guy who they really need him to be a 25 goal scorer. To be honest with you, David, for him to be in the lineup, he has to project to being that. If he isn't that, he won't be in the lineup and he won't be a Maple Leaf. Someone else is going to have to see if they can get that out of him, because that's where he needs to be. He's not a physical player.
Yeah, and look, a lot of people have been supporting Nick Robertson. After we did our episode on him and we talked about the comments he had about us, and he still has a little bit of that mentality of that it's the coach that makes the decision. You've got to make the coach's decision tough. You have to. And I think I give him full credit because I thought he played a pretty solid game, obviously scoring that goal, showing off his shot. This Leafs team will need offense, and he can provide that offense. I think for the Leafs, it's probably got a lot to do with can he keep that scoring touch consistent enough to be in the line. Now, we're not expecting the guy to score every game. I understand that you just said 25 goals. 20 to 25 goals, we should expect maybe Nick Robertson to do that if he's in the lineup consistently. And I do think that also when you look at the comments he made, I think it's he understands he has to go and execute and play well, but he also has to do the little things that Craig Berube wants. Because Craig Berube will take the offense, but he needs to make sure that he can trust Robertson be on the ice to do other things as well.
The problem with Robertson that got him out of the lineup is making bad passes that turn into good offensive chances by the other team. He did that again last night, only once. Mm-hmm. But the coach is looking for that. That's what the coach doesn't want to see. Yeah. Those of us that follow the Leafs closely know that when Robertson does that once or twice in a game, he gets planted in his seat. He ends up off the bench and in the press box. So he's got to also, on the same token, maybe he's not the tough guy, but he has to be offensively aware to make sure that his move doesn't create a really good a high opportunity for the opposition. He did that last night. He's got to wipe that out of his game, because this is not the coach you do that with.
No, and the other problem he had last year was he took a lot of penalties at unnecessary times. A lot of offensive zone penalties too, which again, you don't want to give the other team extra opportunities. So I do think that's a big one for him. He needs to he just needs to focus on being solid, not as you said, not making mistakes. And it's tough when you're in his position. You want to have an impact, so you're going to try your best, and sometimes that can lead to mistakes, right? But I thought a pretty good start for him. Everyone's talking about, we're going to get another preseason MVP type of year from Robertson. We'll see. We'll definitely see. He was my second. He was also my other locked on player. So you and I were aligned on that one. Who was another player? Who's your third and last player?
The goaltender, Akhtyamov.
Yeah.
He was incredible. And watching him play and the way he played, standing up, being ready for the puck, making sure that there were no rebounds, that kind of thing. We saw night and day. When we saw Pexa come in, we saw him. He was doing a lot of swimming. So, I'm not trying, I apologize. I'm not trying to pick on Pexa, but I am trying to point out what goalie number 1 did that goalie number 2 didn't do. And that is be more, looking more in control of the game. We've seen hair on fire before in the Leaf net, and that makes me nervous. Seeing that kind of goaltending makes me nervous. And that's why goalie number 1 in the game last night was so impressive to me.
Yeah, I thought he was also my top star. I mean, you saw the difference really in Akhtyamov and Pexa. Again, I understand it's tough to not, the Senators were really pushing late in the game there, but that could have easily have been a 2-0 Senators lead early. Could have, the Senators had their opportunities. They almost scored early. Stützle just he couldn't finish the wraparound on he got around Akhtyamov, but Akhtyamov made it a tough angle for him to score on that first goal. I thought there was that one where I think was it on Stützle again or Basson, where he had to come across. It was like a 2-on-1. He had to come across and make the save. It's those he's a big goalie. He used his size,
but he moved.
I think these goalies, both of them, are learning a little too much from Anthony Stolarz about trying to save the puck without their glove. Let's leave the glove on, guys. You need your hands. You don't want any broken fingers. That's for sure. But yeah, I thought Akhtyamov looked really solid. He's trying to earn more. He earned quite a few starts with the Marlies last year, and I'm sure he wants to get himself in the conversation as a potential call up with the Leafs. Right?
Or a trade bait. The Leafs got to find a way to get that. Trey Living has said he's still looking for a top 6 forward. And if he's really serious about that, he can't do it with draft picks. He's going to have to do it with players with potential. And Akhtyamov showed a lot of potential in that game. And if he continues to do that, not only can he play himself into the Leaf lineup, he can attract some attention, because everybody in the National Hockey League is looking for a goaltender. They pay $3 million a year, $2 million a year, not 8 or 9 that controls the net, right? Because I really think paying a goaltender $8-9 million is it's tough in today's NHL.
They need to be like the elite of the elite. No, a little better than Linus Hallmark, I have to say.
He's in a bottle. That's what they're looking for in goaltending. A guy that gets hot and stays hot, during the playoffs and has a great year. They're not really worried. I don't think NHL teams are worried about goaltenders. Some are, but I think a lot of, like the Leafs, for example, they're happy to have 2 guys that they think can do the job, as opposed to one guy they're leaning on really heavily, and all their chips are in on that guy. They're splitting their belief in the goaltenders.
I do think I've always been impressed with Akhtyamov just because he always had the cachet from how good he played in the KHL. And look, Dennis Hildeby, I thought, there were shaky times in his first season with the Marlies, and eventually things kind of evened out a little bit. He had a good record. Things kind of settled for him last year. Little bit of a dip if you looked at the production, but he's, I do think that there might be a good competition between the two. Maybe that competition will bring out the best in both goalies. So I did like what I saw from Akhtyamov just based on using his size and things like that. So those were our 3 locked on performers of the game. In our final segment here, we're going to just go through a few. We're going to wrap up this game. We haven't even talked about 2 of the top prospects, how they performed, and we'll look at any other potential news and notes to look out for this week. This is the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with the can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. If you're somebody who also wants to bet on a little preseason, do it at your own risk at times, but it's a great way to get bet on a player like a Nick Roberston to score. It's usually a pretty good bet in the preseason, so you can go and do that over at the FanDuel app. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues here. David Morassutti and Frank Stanisci is here filling in for Mike. Mike should be back for Tuesday's show, so we want to thank you guys for coming and listening to the show. Make sure you're making Locked On Leafs your first listen of the day. And we're just wrapping up this preseason victory over the Ottawa Senators, and we haven't even gone to the prospects. The 2 guys that I'm sure a lot of people, when they saw the lineup, were happy to see Easton Cowan get his first crack. He played pretty much was practicing with Nicolas Waugh and Dakota Joshua, and then in this game, he wasn't playing with them. he drew the first assignment with David Kampf and Nick Robertson. So he's getting his opportunity on the top line to show what he can do. I thought, I saw some good things from him, little things. Yeah, he didn't get on the score sheet, but my favorite moment, I'm sure everyone's favorite moment, David Perron's coming along the boards. He has a chance to lay into him, and he doesn't hold back. He throws a hit, gets the veteran knocked off his game a little bit, and he tries to go for a retaliatory shot. Got a little scuffle there. I like a little bit of that ear. He's got a bit of that. I'm gonna get under your skin a bit type of mentality. I like that from a guy like Easton Cowan.
Yeah, his size, as always, will come into question. But one thing's for sure, there are a lot of people talking about him being a lot bigger, and it showed on that play. And he does need to be a lot bigger, at least to the point where he can protect himself and he can be a part of the aggressiveness this Leaf team wants to exemplify. And part of that aggressiveness is part of the defense. So, yeah, he didn't look out of place. David, sometimes we concentrate too much on a guy like that getting goals. I think the thing that he did to me, which was most impressive, he didn't look out of place. He looked like a part of the team. He wasn't someone like I said about Robertson. Robertson made a mistake. Cowan didn't make any mistakes. And there's opportunities. If there was a game that there was an opportunity to make mistakes, a team full of rookies versus a bunch of veterans, and he, as one of the rookies, did not look out of place. And that's all the team wants, right? They don't necessarily want you to chase goals and allow goals. This is a team that the DNA change is all about winning, not 8-7, but 2-1 or 3-2. That's going to be the objective of this Leaf team, getting the scoring down and then being able to play hard enough and strong enough to get that couple of goals that this team can get, not the 8 that they, before now that they hoped they would get to win.
Yeah, and I look at Cowan. I think you're totally right. Like, he didn't look like a player that was trying to do too much, right? He understands that he needs to make an impression, but he also can't do it by playing outside of what he's expected to do. And I thought we did see a lot of that. Yeah, it would have been nice to see him get on the score sheet, but you want to see him take. You see the progression and being able to handle, playing up against an NHL lineup, right? And that was the task for Ben Danford, All right. Hey, Ben, you're going to be playing against top NHL players on the Senators. And the first impression was, you know, positioning was a bit of, I thought at times maybe caught out of position a bit, but recovered nicely. There was obviously, I think it was the Drake Batherson play where it looked like it was going to be a tap in for a goal. What does he do? Strong stick. Make sure that was not a tap in, and make sure that he battles with the forward that was kind of left alone in front and kept the puck out of the net. Battling for pucks. He's a guy that battles. You're not going to see him. He's going to make it tough to play against. He uses his size, the passing, right? Get that first pass. You see the little details in his game there. And almost scored out of the penalty box. But there's also a reason why he's a defenseman and not a forward. Just missed it a little bit. But some little good things I saw from Ben Danford, considering who he was playing against.
Yeah, he was a big part of the Leaf team, playing well defensively. And we got to keep this. And I'm sorry if it sounds like we're making excuses for the Leafs that played that night, but were inexperienced, and they weren't necessarily over their head. Absolutely not. They weren't over their head, and they could have been. So Danford did what he needed to do, which is ultimately back to what we talked about with Easton Cowan and Robertson. The coach can't notice you make mistakes that lead to high percentage opportunities for the opposition. And when they get them, when they have those high percentage opportunities, what do you do to mitigate that opportunity? You mentioned what you mentioned, and I agree with it 100%. And that's the key. It's not freaking out, because that's really the important thing that this team has to do. The players can't freak out. You know, that's why I'm against why I said a negative thing about the swimming in net. Everything the Leafs do right now has to be professional and never giving up on the puck. That's one of the biggest problems the Leafs have had in the playoffs and during the regular season. And that has always been why they needed to score 8 goals sometimes. So if Danford and Easton Cowan and these young guys learn to not give anything to the opposition, there's less offense that's necessary. The coach appreciates it. Their personal record doesn't. But that's the question here. Are you here for the team, or are you here for yourself? That's the DNA that they're trying to change.
Yeah, that's really it. Are it's the developmental path? I think it's for Ben Danford. You know, I see where that path is going. Right, they want him probably to eventually try to improve on his offensive game. Try to find ways to bring the offense to the table, because I do think that the defense is there. I do think that, maybe there's a little bit of, he gets to see playing against NHL talent where his defense needs to get better in terms of his positioning and things like that. But I do think his competes there. I think he's, he didn't look too much out of place, which is, again, what you want to see. But I'm sure Craig Berube has a few little notes that he's written down for him. But I thought a pretty good start for the young guys there. The Leafs are back in preseason action on Tuesday night against the Senators. It is a home game for the Leafs. So my guess is we're probably going to see the NHL players for the Leafs in this one, and more likely the hopefuls for the Senators. I would think like a guy like Carter Yakimchuk, one of their top prospects, will be in the lineup for that one. I think you're going to see. Hopefully, we'll see Austin Matthews get his first game of the preseason. William Nylander, John Tavares. So we'll see who that is. We'll preview all that on the next show, and we'll go through our projected lineups if we do get that from the Leafs. So I want to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. I want to thank Frank for stepping in here while Mike was away for today. And make sure you come back and listen to the Locked On Leafs podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. Make sure you're following us also on YouTube. And thanks for everybody who put in their desire to try to win a Treyu Savage card. We will get in touch with the winner of that. So I want to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.